The version of Avatar 2 that we as fans got is not what was originally intended, and fortunately enough, we don't have to wait long to actually find out what was intended because James Cameron actually put the thing out there in a different format. It's a comic book, and we now know what it could have been and how much worse it could have been. James Cameron had over a decade to develop Avatar 2, so it makes sense that the film is going to be different than some of the previous early iterations that could have been. As it turns out, James Cameron revealed that he wrote a completely different second installment called The Higher Ground. And contrary to what you might think, this has nothing to do with Anakin getting chopped apart because he did not have the higher ground. In fact, this whole thing just sounds completely different to anything we've gotten from Avatar. So this is actually not Avatar 2. Avatar The High Ground is not like a what-if tale. James Cameron managed to actually fit this into continuity, so it's kind of like a bridge between the two films. So yes, this is canonical, and it's dealing with the rDNA return to Earth, which we already saw flashbacks in with The Way of Water. But this 3-part graphic novel is going to cover more about what is going on with Jake and family before they relocate to live where we catch up with them in The Way of Water. It's also interesting to note that this does depict the battle that would ultimately force Sully and family to retreat, and it's a battle that happens outside, literally, of Pandora. It takes place in space, and this is where they essentially go on a zero-gravity battle, and it's a much more action-focused chapter than anything else. Now, obviously, the reason this would have worked far less as an entry as a film had they produced it, and if it was, more than just a comic book, it's quite apparent. You don't get to spend as much time on this beautiful planet with these creatures and this unique biome. Instead, you're thrust into a large part of the story that takes place in space, that's using all this militarized gear that you're mostly familiar with, that takes it into a more sci-fi in space aesthetic than anything else. And that was ultimately, I think, scrapped because somebody saw that that would make for a pretty boring sequel. Again, I know people will argue that the sequel here is boring anyway, but there's clearly something with the sequel that resonates with fans, which is why it's made so much money. So I do honestly think had we gotten this graphic novel as the actual Avatar 2, it would have really hurt the franchise. I don't think the interest would be as high as it is.